Is Bitcoin ethical? This is going to be a very contentious video talking about a topic a lot of people don't want to bring up. Is Bitcoin ethical, or is it all just a scam? I am Mark with CryptoQuest95, and we're going to dive into the topic right now. All right, guys, good morning. It's a really nice day in Okayama, Japan. Okayama is located kind of in the middle-ish southern part of Japan, I guess. And it really is a fantastic city. I kind of say that about every city I'm in Japan, but this one actually probably is my favorite. It's known for udon, it's known for having really good wheat, and also it has a really thriving coffee culture. One of my favorite, actually my favorite coffee shop in the entire world is here. It's called Life and Coffee, Little Okayama. You can kind of see, very cute. And this is a special coffee. This coffee is from Yunnan, China. Yunnan, China! They're growing coffee now. But it's not just any coffee. Instead, it's coffee that has strawberry in it. So what they do is they take the coffee beans, and while they ferment them, they put fresh strawberries on top, and the strawberries ferment along with coffee cherries. So you end up getting a pretty interesting drink where this is black coffee, but it does taste like it has strawberry syrup in it, although it doesn't. So that's kind of interesting. So the reason I'm making this video is because of what I see as a conflict between the marketing of Bitcoin and what Bitcoin actually is. For me, it's a pretty clear distinction. And unfortunately, when people and newbies are just getting into Bitcoin, oftentimes they fall prey to the marketing rather than to the actual product itself. And this isn't really picking on Bitcoin necessarily, this is just marketing in general. Marketing will, by design, of course, tell you what they want you to know and leave out the actual user experience with the product, right? So in some ways, you can think about this video like a product review of Bitcoin as a product, rather than just the marketing. As far as the marketing, what is the marketing of Bitcoin? Well, if you go online and just look up Bitcoin on, really anywhere, Twitter, YouTube, people who are very interested in it and use Bitcoin or hold Bitcoin will talk about it as money for the world, right? It's the new money that's gonna save the world. They're really these marketing slogans, they're almost memes that don't really have much depth to them, but they sound really good on paper. So for example, digital gold sounds good. Money for the world sounds great. Another one that you hear all the time is Bitcoin fixes this. Whatever the problem is, okay? Money is stolen by a government, Bitcoin fixes this. Okay, inflation, Bitcoin fixes this. So these marketing slogans have some truth to them, but it is exaggerated, blown out of proportion, or in some cases, just completely manipulated. By the way, you see my new outfit? This is very Japanese style outfit. It's like way oversized. We have kind of skinny jeans, and what I learned from the fashion designer that I bought this from in Karashiki, which is near Okayama, is Japanese fashion is all about contrast. Western clothing is about the form of your body and the clothes accentuating that, where Japanese fashion is about the form of the clothing itself. That's why it's a little more baggy and kind of like flowy. I don't know where I'm going, by the way. I'm just kind of walking around. So we have all these slogans that describe what the idealized but not practical version of Bitcoin is, right? And if you are new to Bitcoin and you're interested in it, these slogans are very powerful. The marketing of Bitcoin, in my opinion, is far more powerful than Bitcoin itself. But again, any successful product, you could say that's the case. Any successful product, it really comes down to the marketing. And unfortunately, this is a little bit maybe too far, but in my opinion, a lot of times the most clever and brilliant solutions usually are the ones that don't have the great marketing, which means they usually don't have the most success. And that's because the people that are really brilliant spend most of their time thinking and solving problems, and they don't usually have the interest, desire, or time to, or even awareness of how important marketing is, to bother with the marketing at all. Build it and they will come. It's absolutely not true. There are some cases where it is, but even then. Oh, okay. This plant is not a tea bush, but it is related to the tea bush. It's a camellia, but not sinensis. On the question of ethics with Bitcoin, in order to really understand whether Bitcoin is ethical, we first need to examine what the marketing slogans are, and then see, based on those marketing slogans, how does the product actually hold up. Okay. And I would really recommend reading a book for this, and that is the Bitcoin Standard. The Bitcoin Standard is sort of like, I guess, the biggest marketing book on Bitcoin that's ever been written. It has a lot of really big, great ideas that don't really connect with Bitcoin itself. Mostly marketing and a little bit, I would say, unethical. But you need to read it to get an understanding of what the message is that Bitcoin enthusiasts and marketers are trying to transmit to people. So let's talk about this. First off, what is good money? What is good, sound money for the world? Well, in order for it to be good money, you have to be able to use it as money. Sounds obvious. Well, the Bitcoin Standard describes money as something that is divisible, right? So if you have a giant gold bar, a giant gold brick, it's difficult to go to your convenience store and shave off little pieces of gold. That's challenging. So in ideal money, you can divide, which is why, in theory, Bitcoin is better than gold, because it can be divided. Another element of Bitcoin being really good is that it can be separated from the state. So you don't need custodians. You can be your own bank, which, by the way, be your own bank is also a marketing slogan for Bitcoin. But are these things really true? And there's many more examples. This walk and talk, I'm just talking off the top of my head. So I'm sure there's many more, and maybe more will come to me as we walk. But let's talk about these two claims. First off, can Bitcoin really be subdivided? Saifedean Ammous, in his book on the Bitcoin Standard, says that it can be subdivided infinite times, more or less. Not actually infinite, but you can break down a Bitcoin all the way down into 0.00001 whatever little fragments. You don't need to buy an entire Bitcoin, okay? Which is useful if Bitcoin is $60,000. Most people can't afford to buy one entire Bitcoin, especially the people in the parts of the world like El Salvador, where Bitcoin is being pushed on them as a currency. It'd be like, you know, trying to use the American dollar, but the smallest bill is $1,000, or even $60,000, I guess would be the literal analogy. So Bitcoin can be broken down, but is this true? No. It's partially true, not fully true. What do I mean by that? So if you take one coin, you can only subdivide it to the point where you can actually trade it. So for example, let's say right now, Bitcoin, in order to send it from me to you, costs $100. That means, in theory, yes, you can subdivide it to $1, but you can't send $1. Right? That's the key here. In practice, this is where practice for marketing comes into play. In practice, you can only subdivide it to the smallest unit, that is what the on-chain fee is. And Bitcoin, as described in the Bitcoin Standard, the on-chain fee is very likely going to get to the point where it costs thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to send money with Bitcoin. That's a problem. A friend of mine named Joseph, who might be even watching this video, who always told me about his interest in a cryptocurrency called Ripple. Yeah, XRP, Ripple. And I use Ripple. And one of the things about Ripple that I despised is that when you use Ripple, people send it to you. Let's say they send you 30 Ripple. Well, in order to send Ripple from you to someone else, you have to have 20 left on your wallet. Which means if someone sends you 20 and you have 20 Ripple, you can't send any money. That Ripple is dead. It is forever burned into your wallet. It would be as if you have a physical wallet and I give you, $20, and that $20 like becomes like permanently fused to the inside of the wallet. And now it can be used. Any money you put in now on is fine, but it means if you want to trade wallets, if you want to get a new wallet, whatever, you burn 20 Ripple each time. And I thought that was insane. I thought that was so stupid. Why would you ever want to do that? Why would you ever want to burn? And the big problem with that is the more that Ripple is worth, the more XRP grows and more people use it. And if it becomes, let's say, the money of the world, that 20 Ripple might be worth $10,000. So all of a sudden, it's not so good. Okay. Now with Bitcoin, it's actually much, much worse, because Bitcoin actually could continue growing. Any money that is below the on-chain fee is effectively permanently burned into your wallet. It's dead. It's never accessible again. And if we're talking about $1 or $2, not such a big deal. Okay. I don't know what percentage of wallets right now on the Bitcoin network are effectively dead because you can't send them because the on-chain fee is too high. To be fair, that number will change as the fees go up and down, but over time, the fees do rise, right? Any wallet right now that has the equivalent of like 25 cents of BTC is likely permanently dead forever. The on-chain fee is probably never going to get to the point at like 1 penny per transaction where it would be possible to send that money. That is a huge problem. So, unethical. It is unethical to say that Bitcoin can be divided into usable amounts of currency. And as we know from reading the Bitcoin Standard, one of the elements of good money is that it is divisible. Saifedean Ammous writes about that himself, I think. Maybe I'm confusing books, but I'm pretty sure that's in his book about what sound money is. Okay. Let's talk about another claim that Bitcoin marketers like to make about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is freedom. Become your own bank. Let's talk about this. Is this claim just marketing, or is it wholly and completely true? The answer to that should be pretty obvious based on our last conversation, which is that is completely fabricated. That is just marketing. Why? Well, we already talked about how with the wallet, you have a amount that is the minimum before that wallet is basically dead, before it's not usable anymore. Okay. And as time goes on, the number of wallets that are unusable because the amount is too low, let's say 90%, 95%, who knows what it is. All of a sudden, all of that Bitcoin is dead. And what that Bitcoin does, actually does have a function. It's not totally dead. What it does is make the people who do have enough to offload it, makes them wealthier. That's the game here. You're thinking, well, why would Bitcoin people who have a lot of money in Bitcoin want Bitcoin to be frozen and dead so no one can use it? Well, the obvious answer is it stops it from going on the market. It makes it more valuable. It's like Pokemon cards, right? Imagine that there are 1 million holographic Charizards, and for some reason, and they're in like protective cases, okay? And for some reason, like all those cases get like, I don't know, magnetically fused to the earth so they can never be moved. All of a sudden, any Charizards that are free floating, that like can be traded and like sold on the market, those are gonna be worth a lot because they're not bound permanently into the ground, okay? But let's look at El Salvador. So in El Salvador, people are using Bitcoin, right? But they're not. They're actually using Chivo. Chivo is a government-made wallet. Now, if we're talking about a situation where the vast majority of wallets are basically frozen because the amount in them is too small to use on chain, what will happen is all of those people will need to use custodial solutions. Lightning doesn't work. A poor person can't use Lightning because they have to pay the on-chain fee, which is hundreds of thousands of dollars, to get their Bitcoin onto Lightning. But if the amount in their wallet is too small to even pay the on-chain fee to put it into a Lightning wallet, then that is dead. Remember, Lightning needs to be refreshed every year. Nodes have to be refreshed, nodes go offline, and every time they do, you have to pay that on-chain fee that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the only solution in that scenario, the only solution is to put your Bitcoin into a custodial solution to make it usable as Lightning, let's say. And you might say, well, that's fine. Custodians aren't so bad. But then all of a sudden we break another marketing line of Bitcoin, which is become your own bank. If you cannot be your own bank because you don't have enough money to pay the massive central banking fees, by the way, that is something else that is set in the Bitcoin standard. Dude, guys, can you see how all this stuff is connected? In the Bitcoin standard, Saifedean Ammous, the writer, literally says that in the future, Bitcoin transactions will be so complex and difficult and expensive, it'll only be central banks that use it. Well, if that's the case, and you have to use Bitcoin on the base to send money to get it into Lightning, then you have to be a central bank to even accomplish that basic task. You see? You see? That's the problem. So the only solution is that all these people have to use custodians. Now, what custodian are they going to use? You might say, well, it's a marketplace, right? People are going to go with the best bank, the best Bitcoin or Lightning bank that the market has. Well, here's the problem. What happened in El Salvador? Are people using Lightning wallets that are semi-non-custodial? Is it using the Moon wallet, wallet of Satoshi? Is it using Samurai wallet? Or any of these wallets, by the way, that have been captured by the US government or shut down or closed because it's too expensive? No, what people will do is they're going to do what they can afford. And in El Salvador, what they could afford was using Chivo, the government-controlled, government-made Lightning wallet, Bitcoin Lightning wallet. Oh, now we're hurting the next element of Bitcoin marketing, right? Which was separation of money and state. Well, when Bitcoin fees are so high that the only wallets people use are the ones made by their local government, all of a sudden it's not so separate. Now remember, nothing is verifiable on chain. The Bitcoin wallet, Chivo, is not even using Lightning behind the scenes. It's just a database. It's just the same as PayPal. It's not actually using Lightning. And you might say, well, who cares? Who cares that it's controlled by the government? Well, the reason you should care is because when a one-party government, like in El Salvador, decides that you are a political enemy, bad things happen, especially if they directly control your bank account. And this isn't even an El Salvador thing. This isn't even a hypothetical. Look at Canada. Canada shut down the banks for people that were protesting, the truckers that were protesting. And that's not even a populist dictator. That's just a republic, effectively, okay? So if the government is controlling the Lightning wallets, that's a problem. And here's two other things you should know about this. One, why do people use in El Salvador Chivo for Bitcoin? Why not use any other Lightning wallet? Well, the reason is they can't afford not to. What the genius and viciousness of the government in El Salvador was they pay the on-chain fee to put money into their wallet, to their Bitcoin wallet, right? They pay it. By they, I mean the taxpayers. So the taxpayers are paying for the service to convert their Bitcoin into Lightning, which concentrates Bitcoin into the hands of Bukele, the president there. You can't use another wallet. People that are making 50 cents a day can't use other wallets. It's not financially possible. Literally, physically not possible on chain. And another thing you should know about El Salvador in regards to Lightning and their wallets, why it's so dangerous to concentrate power and rely on the government to control your Lightning wallet, besides the fact that they can do what they did in Canada and freeze political dissidents, The other thing that happened is, this is in my documentary, you can watch it yourself, is that at the beginning of Bitcoin and Chivo's rollout, the Chivo wallet intentionally, and they didn't say this by the way, but then they came out later about it, they intentionally would let you put Bitcoin into Chivo, but would not let you send Bitcoin out of Chivo. And at any minute, that switch can just be turned on and off. Do you see why this is so horrendous? The fees on Bitcoin make it the best tool that could ever be made for controlling its population. Because if the fee to use it is significantly too high, that the on-chain fee, even right now, in fact, let's do the math. Let's say you earn 50 cents a day and the on-chain fee is $100. $100 divided by 50 cents. It would take you 200 days of working. That's 100% of your entire salary. Right now in El Salvador, most people in El Salvador right now would have to work 200 days to send an on-chain transaction once on Bitcoin, right now, assuming that the on-chain transaction is $100. And if you do that, you would send $0. So to send 50 cents, to send one entire day of your salary, you would have to work 200 days. So what does that mean? That means that this idea of Bitcoin being your own bank doesn't really work. In fact, you can be your own bank right now in America. You can find a location and rent it. You can, get some regulation paperwork done, open your own bank, pre-stock it with a few million of your own dollars, maybe a couple $100 million, and then create a bank. Right? Well, with Bitcoin, you can do that too. And for the vast majority of the world, the ridiculousness of being your own bank with actual fiat money is just as ridiculous as trying to be your own bank with Bitcoin. All right, so is it ethical to say that you can be your own bank with Bitcoin? Is it ethical to say that you can be self-reliant? No, it's not ethical. By the way, there's a guy who I used to work for, a boss of mine, pretty successful company, and he's a very big BTC proponent. And one of the things that I've read on his Reddit was that it's not fair to say that Bitcoin doesn't have a use. Its use is to be held. Its use is to be a store of value. And that's its use. But again, what I believe that's missing is something can only be a store of value if you can offload it. That's really important. And he's missing that. So what do I mean by that? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the next marketing slogan of Bitcoin, which is store of value. Let's imagine that I'm a very wealthy man. I have $1 billion. Why not? And I want to store my value. I want to store value that is perfect, that no government can take, that no individual can steal, that can keep its value over the long term, right? Bitcoin is really good for that because it has a limited number of Bitcoins that can ever be produced. That's not exactly true. That's a little bit of a marketing slogan too. But let's assume, for the sake of the argument, that that is correct. We can talk about why it's not later. Well, imagine we have an unobtainium rock, okay? Kind of like Bitcoin. It's this thing that can only have 21 million rocks, sort of like gold, but even more rare, can only have 21 million, can't be copied, nothing. And I have this physical object and I want to make sure that no one can steal it. Well, what I can do is go to a volcano and throw it all in, and it just melts into the earth, all right? And I say, that volcano is storing my value. That's cool. I'm not wrong. Okay, these like perfect rocks are sitting at the bottom of this volcano. The problem is that I can't access it again. If I can't access it again, it doesn't matter how much value it's storing, it can't be accessed. Here's another example. Imagine that I know in the ocean where there is a sunken shipwreck. filled with Roman gold coins. Those gold coins can never be copied or remade, in theory, right? The Roman Empire is gone, it's dead. So those coins are pretty unique, and I could say that they're a great store of value. But if I don't have the ability or technology or submarine or whatever to access it, it doesn't, and let's say the submarine isn't invented yet, it doesn't matter because they can't be accessed. It doesn't matter that I know the location, I can't access them. So with Bitcoin, we kind of have a similar situation where with Bitcoin, it doesn't matter that I have $1,000 worth of Bitcoin in my wallet. If the fee to send it off my wallet is $1,001, it's inaccessible. It's value that is permanently burned and lost. Okay, so being a store of value is contingent on being able to move the value. That is the important point. That's also known as medium of exchange. Okay, so yes, having Bitcoin locked on a wallet does have some value, in that anyone who has enough value in Bitcoin to move and actually use it as a medium of exchange, even if it's a bad one, if they can actually afford the on-chain transaction, then your dead Bitcoin sitting on a wallet is helping their money be worth more and be usable, okay? So, store of value. Is it ethical to say that Bitcoin is a store of value? Not really. In my opinion, Bitcoin can be used as a store of value if you have enough value stored to become a medium of exchange. You can be your own bank if you're wealthy enough. All right, let's talk about Bitcoin.org. Let's talk about the founding document of Bitcoin and the founder of Bitcoin. This is the area with Bitcoin that I have the most contention with. This is the area that I find the most problematic and most unethical. It's that oftentimes Bitcoiners, well, actually, let me tell you a story. I remember a few years ago, I went to the Bitcoin conference and they had a volcano in it. It was the El Salvador volcano. And around it, they had quotes from Satoshi, who was the founder of Bitcoin, who was the one who invented it. Either the person or the group of people that invented Bitcoin. And I found that really outrageous, that the conference had so many quotes and references and elements that were tied to the founder of Bitcoin. And the reason, at the time, I couldn't really put my finger on why that kind of disturbed me, but I realize what it is now. So if you look at the founding document of Bitcoin, what's called the white paper, is it outlines what the idea of Bitcoin is, what is the purpose of it. And it's blatantly clear that the description in the white paper is opposite of every single element that Bitcoin is now. It is a complete reversal and bastardization. Now, it's fair, by the way, and I really do mean this. Even if you like what Bitcoin is now, it is fair and objective for you to say, well, sure, Bitcoin now has almost nothing to do with the original idea of Bitcoin that was listed in the white paper, written about in the white paper. And I would say that you are correct. And I would disagree with you that the current iteration is good for the project, but you would have a counter argument, and I'm sure it would be fair as well. But what we can argue about is whether the iteration of Bitcoin has anything to do with the original version, because it doesn't. Every element, and by the way, this will be a separate video where we go through the white paper line by line and compare it to what Bitcoin is now. Logically speaking, though, there's just no connection between Bitcoin now and what was in the white paper. So what really bothers me is when Bitcoiners, marketers I should say, tell people to read the white paper to learn about Bitcoin. Totally unethical. That is like North Korea level gaslighting. Every element of the white paper is counter to what Bitcoin is now. Every element. Every element. And with Satoshi's emails, we can now verify basically everything that Bitcoin is now, such as the 1 megabyte limit, which is why the fees are so expensive, was something he was against. And it was just a temporary hold to stop network attacks. Temporary. So to say to people to look at the white paper and read the white paper is just absurd. Again, it's like North Korea saying, yeah, look at our democratic charter, right? Or like, for example, in El Salvador, it's like the President Bukele saying like, oh yeah, we're good. We're a presidency, I got voted in, right? Don't look at the fact that I removed all the Supreme Court justices. Don't look at the fact that I'm changing the Constitution to let me stay in power. Like, don't look at that, okay? So here's a specific example. There's this video that I saw recently, and it's of one of these guys that's more on the right, who's debating people on the left. And the person on the left reads a quote from like Thomas Jefferson or something about how racist and how bad Thomas Jefferson is, okay? And asks the guy on the right, like, okay, how can you believe in the US Constitution when this is the kind of stuff that the founders believed? I think it was Charlie Kirk.
You believe that the Constitution's the best document in political history?
Greatest political document ever
There
written.
you go.
Thank you.
I want to know, how is it possible to believe that when it's based on racist principles? They describe indigenous peoples as merciless Indian savages, and they don't even recognize other people of color. I just want to know how you think it's possible to believe that's such a great document we're
Thank
founded
you for
upon.
the question. Where does it say that in the document?
What?
Where does it say what you said in the actual document?
I'm not entirely sure,
It
but...
doesn't.
No,
Do you know what it does say? Provide for the general welfare of all people. What you said is nowhere in the founding documents at all. What you said is what some of the prejudices that was in the people of the founding fathers. This is called a logical fallacy. Tell me why the document is not correct. Don't tell me the sins of the authors. It's a big difference.
So here's where all this connects to Bitcoin and why this doesn't make any sense. Because in art and in things like the Constitution was the ideal. Yes, all men are created equal. And America didn't live up to that ideal. It had slavery, right? But as time has moved on, America is trying to live more and more up to that ideal through social movements, etc. But with Bitcoin and Bitcoin marketing, it's the opposite of how it's supposed to be. It's the total opposite. It makes no sense to me. They do the opposite. Instead of looking at the art and seeing the ideal, right, and not judging the creator, they only care about the creator and they ignore the art. The Bitcoin white paper spells everything out. All of it is big block propaganda. All of it tells you that Bitcoin should be a medium of exchange. It should be peer-to-peer electronic cash. Everything that is talked about in the white paper is ignored, and all they care about is Satoshi. It's so bastardized. It's so backwards, in my opinion. It's like looking at, Picasso or something and saying, yeah, his art sucked, I hate it, it's worthless. All of the art that he made itself is worthless, but he was really cool. Let's put quotes of Picasso all over our art museum, but we'll never actually show his work because his work sucks. His work is like opposite of what we believe. That is the point. That the white paper is what we should be looking at for guidance and for getting an idea of like what sound money is for the digital world. And who cares what he thinks? Who cares about him? And in this example, it's even more weird because he, as the creator of Bitcoin, based on his emails, was for big blocks just as much as the white paper. Both him and his work both line with this idea that that Bitcoin should be peer-to-peer electronic cash. So it's doubly as weird. Like, that's why I don't understand why any person who's involved in Bitcoin would ever even want to say Satoshi's name. Like, they should be disgusted with him. Okay? And I have to admit, of all the people that I've ever interacted with on Twitter, there has been one person I've ever interacted with on Twitter that was intellectually honest about this. And I don't think he got it. I don't think he realized, like, the point that he thought he was making was not the point he was making. But it's this guy right here. We were having a discussion over Twitter about Bitcoin, and he said very plainly, who cares about Satoshi? What he said and his beliefs are so 2011. Okay, I think that's genius. I think that is so true. And I actually applaud him because he's the only one who's honest. People that are in Bitcoin right now, the marketers, should not be quoting or referencing Satoshi, because not only did his art, the white paper, but he himself was fully, completely antithetical to the ideas of contemporary Bitcoin. It's really kind of amazing. All right, got a new pillow for my flight, and that about wraps up today's video, talking about some of my ethical questions when it comes to how Bitcoin is marketed, how it is talked about. Specifically with things like Bitcoin will set you free, be your own bank, how Bitcoin fixes everything. All these things are more or less theories that don't have much connection with real life, the actual practice of having Bitcoin. So guys, I appreciate you watching. Be sure to subscribe and like if you like this video and more videos like it. And if you have any topic you want me to cover in the future, be sure to let me know. See you around, guys. I'm gonna go to Lawson and get some snacks now.